So I think it's interesting that a man is going to talk about what are the feminist aspects of Islam, right? I think that's one of the biggest issues facing Islam. Is like a couple of years ago, Saudi Arabia had a big discussion about women's rights, and the only people that were invited were men. That's one of our biggest issues. How do we discuss women's issues without women being present? How do I, as a man, assign women their worth within religion? Is that a problem, or is it just me that thinks that that might be a problem? And when we look at feminism in Islam, we always make this argument that in our inception, we gave women rights that they never had before. Which is true, right? We gave women the rights to inherit. We gave women the rights to marry who they choose. We gave women all sorts of rights that didn't exist in pre-Arabian society, are in the society of like the Arabic-speaking Christians, are in the society of the Hebrew-speaking Jews, right? We were the first monotheistic faith to give women some kind of rights. But do people who critique Islam, do they look at our women's rights record in the year 650, or do they look at our human rights record moving forward from there? How do we view the rights of women, say, in 1970? Where do we get the biggest hit? In the beginning or now? Do people say when Islam was formulated, Muslims did A, B, and C to women, or are people saying now Muslims do this to women? Where do you think we have a bigger problem with femininity now? Now or then? Now, right? Like for sure now. I'm not saying it was a perfect world back then either where there was this equality. So we have two ways that we look at the place of, three ways actually we look at the place of women within modern Islam, right? We have one where men are superior. There's the egalitarian approach where men and women are completely equal in everything. And then there's the approach that men and women have roles that are religiously defined, right? So before we jump into those roles, how do we even define feminism? Is it fair to define feminism by like the modern Western construct of what feminism is? Meaning that this liberation of women can only take place if the woman is A, B, C, and D, and if she disagrees from that, then she's somehow oppressed? You follow me on that? So what is the definition of feminism that we're going to work with? Are we going to work from the Western definition of feminism? Are we going to define our own reality of what it means to be a feminist? I'm asking you guys.
Make your own.
Make your own. So why would we make our own?
Because, I mean, there's a lot of different ideas of what feminism is. It's really like your own personal idea, even in the West. There's not really a general idea of feminism.
Exactly. I agree 100%. No woman is exactly the same as another woman. No man is exactly the same as another man. No Muslim is exactly the same as another Muslim, right? Are we monoliths who all just believe and think the exact same thing without any difference ever? No, of course not. Then we wouldn't be human beings, we'd be robots who were programmed to be a certain way. Of course we have ikhtilaf. Of course we have differences of opinions, right? So that's the same with feminism. So we have to define what that is. So does it mean to be feminist I have to write stuff on my chest and run around naked when people are giving talks? Does that make me a feminist? No. To those women who do that, yes, that makes them a feminist. They're standing up for something that they believe in, right? But is it any different than a woman who chooses to wear hijab and niqab? Does that make her less of a feminist because she chooses to do that? So that's where the definitions have to be sorted out before we can sort out the whole concept of feminism within Islam. Because what does it mean to be a Muslim woman who's a feminist, right? And what does it mean to be a feminist who's a Muslim woman? Are those the same thing? Are they different? So before we get into like those whole things, I don't think that, and this is where I think maybe I'm going to differ from what you guys wanted, and if it is, then I'm going to apologize. I don't want to talk about how Islam gave women rights. That's something we all know. That's something every lecture you've ever went to about women in Islam has told you, right? You can go on the internet, type in women in Islam, and every single thing that we could think of would be listed within the first page of search results, right? If you Googled it. And if we went the other way and looked at women's abuses of women's rights within Islam, we would find the same amount of things, right? Instantaneously, all the evidence would be there within one Google search, within the first page, and we'd be able to sort it out. But what does that mean for us trying to live as Muslims, living in modernity, who struggle with these concepts of misogyny and feminism? With patriarchy? What does that mean? To you as young Muslims, what does it mean when you hear the patriarchy? What does it mean when you hear that you're an Islamic feminist or a Muslim feminist? Or what does it mean to you when someone tells you that you can't be a feminist because you're a Muslim? What does that mean to you? Because that's what has to be sorted out. The way I think about it is irrelevant. You see what I'm saying? If we can go through problematic ayat and things like this and express what they really do mean and all of that, but what does it mean to be a Muslim, to be a woman, and to be a feminist, if you are a feminist? So what does that mean? And men, we can't really answer that question. We can't answer what does it mean to be a woman. Can we? I mean, I can, but wouldn't it be the most dishonest answer you've ever heard in your life on what it means to be a woman from a man who's never lived one single second as a woman? So what does it mean to be a woman and to be a Muslim living in this time, in this era in America? What does it mean?
I think feminism now, people like to construct the idea that there's like, it's very like rigid and there's certain like barriers and like things that people expect you to be, but I really feel like feminism, the whole idea is like supporting women and giving them the right regardless of what they choose to do with that. Like you said with like the people like with their shirts off, like if that's how they define feminism, or some ladies in a hijab and she feels empowered by wearing hijab, then she can still be a feminist and like represent that. I think like people want to define it like one way, but like if you truly are a feminist, then you'll like support women regardless of like if it fits into your idea of like, feminism.
I like that definition. Is that a working definition that we can work with? That a feminist is someone who supports women regardless of how they feel about what that person is doing. So what does that mean then? So religiously, what does that mean to support women regardless of what they're doing? So if I look around this room, I see that a lot of us choose not to wear hijab, which I'm totally okay with, right? Because why? Because that's your choice as a woman to do it or not to do it. It's not my choice or my right to force you to do anything that you're uncomfortable doing. You see what I'm saying? So the issue that we would have is if someone comes to a sister and says, you have to do A, B, and C or you're no longer part of us. That would not be a feminist approach to Islam. You follow me on that? Well, what approach would that be to Islam? Besides Orthodox. Let's throw Orthodox out. Anybody? Bueller? So let's start with this. Does anybody have the right to tell somebody how they should live their life?
No.
Okay. That was a resounding answer, right? So how many people have heard somebody tell a sister that they have to wear hijab? Okay, it's one person. I've heard it a lot in my life. That you have to do this. You have to do this. Now, whose business is it if a sister wears hijab or doesn't wear hijab? Hers. Completely hers. It's nobody else's, right? Not even your parents. It's not even your parents' decision to wear hijab or not to wear hijab. It's completely your decision, right? So that's a feminist statement either way. But what we see, what happens a lot is as soon as a sister decides to wear hijab, what is she labeled? Extremist, but she's also labeled not being a feminist anymore. She's bought into the patriarchy, which is kind of a Hain kind of expression about what feminism is, right? Because in the West, how do people look at the hijab?
Oppression.
It's oppression, right? That's how they look at it instantaneously without understanding or ever talking to a woman who chooses to wear the hijab. They just automatically assume that a woman who wears it is forced into it, right? And that might be the case for some women, but is it the case for every woman? And I actually know women who want to wear hijab and they're forced not to, which is another issue. altogether. You follow me on this, guys? So when we look at the idea of feminism within Islam, we have to ask ourselves, how liberating are we willing to be? How much are we willing to allow women to explore their own gender and to come up with who they are for themselves? Which is a huge question to ask. I'm not just talking about like one Muslim community, I'm talking about Muslim world, right? Like here in the University of Cincinnati, there are people who don't come to the MSA because they say sisters aren't wearing hijab. So, or there's too much mixing between men and women, right? So when do we, or how do we, and this is why I want you guys to like answer back to me, how do we allow people to find themselves in religion and within cultural context where they can be truly them, truly who they want to be, and allow them to explore self without being judgmental? Because that to me is truly feminism within Islam, where I allow my Muslim sisters to figure out who they are, what they believe in, and who they want to be without me pushing my ideas down their throat. Or saying, you have to be this, or you have to be that. But we give ourselves as men, we give ourselves the ability to sort it out as we move through things. Right? So if you don't want to have a beard and you shave it off, nobody comes to you and goes, hey, why aren't you wearing a beard, brother? So, now if you have a beard and you shave it off, most people don't come to you and say, oh, why did you shave? They leave you alone. But isn't just as outward expression of religiosity or faith as a hijab? It is, but it isn't. You know, we expect our sisters to be a lot more brave than us, to wear a flag around everywhere they go, but most men won't do it themselves, right? So how do we build a place where women can express themselves? And how do we build that within religious context? And was it something that was ever built into our religious context that women were allowed to express themselves? Because the answer is yes, of course, women were allowed to express themselves within Sharia. And a couple of years ago, I went through 1,400 years of tafsir to see how we change things along the line to make life for women very narrow. Something that started out very wide became very narrow for women. So how do we build that? Is it something we want to build? Do we want Muslim sisters to have a sense of self, a sense of identity, a sense of what they want out of life and not what they're told they want out of life? I'm asking you guys. I know my answers. Like, I really honestly know what I think and what I believe. But what do you guys think? I mean, it's very easy to shake our heads, but what do we think about it?
I mean, so we have to teach people to think about the person's intention of what they're doing before they can tell them what they can and can't do. So like you're saying, oh, people they don't want to come to MSA because there's people intermixing men and women. Well, they're not thinking about what our intention of coming here is. The ultimate intention is we want to learn about Islam. We want to, ultimately, grow within the religion. So when people understand, like, oh, they're not going to talk to the other gender, they're just coming here to, learn, then maybe people will start to be more understanding, and sort of there'll be more freedom for women and men to.
So, in that, do we expect? How am I going to word this? So, with the concept of feminism maybe being that it is the liberation of women from control of the patriarchy, right? Meaning that men dictate what women can do, right? If we use that as a definition. Do we then require that we have to understand the motives and the intentions behind what women do before we can accept them? You follow me on that? So I hear what you're saying, that people should understand the intention behind things, but there are times that we can't understand what people are doing. So let's look at the women's mosque, right? Do you have a thing?
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, think it's not even that. I think people just need to realize that at the end of the day, you can only control yourself. So if you have certain beliefs, you have the right to those beliefs, but you can't think that everybody else is gonna live life the way you think that it should be lived. So I think it's worrying about everybody's intentions. That is obviously in an ideal world. If we could do that, we would. But humans are selfish. It's just how it is. But I think if everybody started realizing that at the end of the day, you can control yourself and you can control what you do and what you think, and everybody else has the right to do the same thing, I think that's what we need to learn and we need to teach people.
It comes down to a matter of rights. It comes down to the matter that I have the right to be fundamentally me and to believe what I want to believe, but then I have to allow you that same right to be fundamentally you and to believe what you want to believe. Whether it goes completely opposite of what I believe, that's how a society should function. So let's look at the women's mosque, right? It's a modern reality of a feminist movement within Islam. You guys know the women's mosque? There's 2 of them now. So the women's mosques are mosques that are in California that were built for and operated by women. A woman stands up and gives the khutbah. She leads the women in prayer. All the classes are done by women. Everything in the mosque is for and by women. So that's a question. How does that make you feel? As a man, as a woman, as a Muslim, how does that make you feel to know that women have went off and started their own space? I had to think about this for a while because the first thing that popped in my head is you can't do that. Literally, that was the first thing that came to my head was in Sharia, that's not acceptable. You can't do that, right? It's pretty much proven in all 4 schools of fiqh that you can't do that. But then I started to think about it in a different way. Why am I blaming the victim? Why am I blaming women who felt like they did not have a place within their own mosque, that they didn't have a place within their own religion? So to find a place where they could practice their religion and fulfill their religious obligations where they felt like they were wanted, they had to go and start their own mosque. So what does that feel like, right? To me, I was ashamed that women in my religion didn't feel like their spiritual needs were being met at all of the masajid in California, which is a huge number of masajid, right? That their spiritual needs were not being met to such a level that they had to go somewhere else. Have you guys seen the movie Unmosqued? A lot of it's about Cincinnati, so you should probably check it out. Yeah, a lot of it's about the Clifton Mosque, prior to my arrival here, and why I'm at the Clifton Mosque. But if you don't create space for women, are they expected to stay in religion? Are they expected to go to buildings where they're not wanted? If women have to meet in a janitor's closet to pray, and they're completely, all they get to listen to is a disembodied voice coming down from them, do we expect them to want to stay there? Do we really? We did this in Denver, we flipped it, where we brought in a bunch of women speakers. And so the women were all with the women teacher, and all the men got to listen to was a voice in another room. And then, because it was for the sisters, we had all the children, right? And then at the end of it, I asked the brothers, "What'd you think of this?" They said, "I hated it. It was horrible. We couldn't hear anything. We couldn't see anybody. The kids were a disaster." I was like, "This is what your wives go through every time we have a program. So what can we do about that?" They said I was a little bit radical. I don't think it was radical. I think it was proving a point, right? So how do we build spaces that allow women to, we're lucky in Cincinnati because the 2 big mosques both have women on the board, right? The 2 big mosques say that women have some authority and power within their buildings, right? But other communities that I've been in, they don't even have a space for women to pray Jummah. Literally not a place for women to pray Jummah. So if we don't start being more feminist in our approach to Islam, how long do you think it can last without any women? How many generations do you think we have in us before women start to stand up and say, this isn't for me. There's no spiritual connection here. I can't even go to the building. And when I do go to the building, I have to be so far away from where everybody else is. It wasn't what was going on at the time of the Prophet, was it? It was the men, the children, then the women, to the point where Asma bint Abi Bakr touched a Sahaba on his shoulder and asked, what did he say? Talking about Muhammad. That's how close they were. They weren't behind a wall. There was no light that you had to flip on so the imam knew you were there so he could include you in his intention. So how do we reclaim that spirit of feminism within our religion?
If that's the sunnah, then why do we make them separate rooms now?
Because we became very pious, right? We became very, at some point, the sunnah became not really followed as much as the law is followed. The law became more than the sunnah. You see what I'm saying? So like we said, if it's good that they're behind us, wouldn't it be better if they were behind a wall? Right? Like, because then there's no temptation for us to like be with each other and talk to each other and have mixing. So that's just the way it went. Then if you go to certain Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, they don't have, there's no woman's side of the mosque in the Emirates. I lived there for 2 years, never once saw it. In Egypt they have it. You know, they have a women's side, but it's usually really small and kind of dank, is what my wife told me. She said it was like not the nicest place in the world. And I said, well, either's the place that I was in. This is Egypt, after all. No offense to Egyptians, but it wasn't vacuumed and things like that. So how do we go about building that space? How do we go about challenging the mindset that women are inferior when it's almost enshrined in the Quran, right? Read Surah An-Nisa, the 34th ayah. Go read all the tafsir on that ayah and see. It gets down to the point where it's like women can't ride horses as well as men. I mean, it gets down to the point of ridiculous in the tafsir. So how do we change something that's been codified? So we can start thinking women as equals. Because Allah think of women as equals. Whenever you read an ayah that says men and women, men and women, men and women, huh? It doesn't say men get this, men get this, men get this. It says men and women. Mu'mineen wa mu'minat. Huh? It always does that, huh? So it's egalitarian with God. The Day of Judgment will all be a sin for a woman is the same as a sin for a man, right? But in our societies, are they really egalitarian? Do women have the same rights as men in Islam? On the day-to-day streets, the day-to-day way that we live our lives? Should women have the same rights as men in Islam on how we live our day-to-day lives? Yes is the answer for that. An overwhelming yes, right? So how do we do it? I know this is probably not the conversation you guys wanted. You guys really wanted like, and then we did this, and then we did this, but that's true. We did all these beautiful things in the past. But I'm not living in the past. I have a daughter today, right? I have a lovely 16-year-old daughter today that every day has to deal with misogyny. Every day has to deal with being told that somehow she's less than because she's not a man. Every day she has to deal with these things. And every night I have to pick her back up and tell her that that's not the way it's supposed to be. But there's only so many times you can tell somebody that before they say, this is the way it is. And I don't want to be a part of it. You see it? You see what I'm saying? I talked to 500 people who have left Islam. 500 people who have left Islam within the last 9.5 months, 10 months. And a lot of the women who have left Islam have left because of this. Not because they don't believe in God. Not because they don't believe that Islam has truth in it, and that but they don't believe that they're second-class citizens. They don't believe that they should be treated like less than. They don't believe that when they go to the mosque, they can't see the imam. They don't believe when they go to the mosque, they have to be in a room somewhere in a basement. They want to be equals. So how do we do that? How do we uplift women to their status that they should really have within the ummah? You hear us say stuff like, women were the last creation of Allah, and as every creation got better than the one before it, so his last creation, women are the best, and they're put up on a pedestal in Islam. You hear people say that, right? But then we compare women to suckers. You know, we have a sucker with a wrapper on it, and then we have a sucker without a wrapper on it, and this is how we compare women. This is what women are to us, suckers. And I know people like that meme. I hate that meme because women are so much greater than a lollipop. You see what I'm saying? Like, how would you like if our whole essence of masculinity was brought down to a piece of candy? That's what when we say that's okay for women, and then we pass it around as if we're saying something beautiful about who they are. You see what I'm saying? Like, that to me is infuriating, man. Like, it really gets me. So my question to you guys, and this is what you guys need to figure out, because my generation's pretty much the way we are, right? We're going to be the way we are. How do we build a space that makes men and women equal? How do we build a space where your children don't have to have this conversation?
I think the first thing would just be to address that it is an issue, and not just like sweep it under the rug, like it's been done. And like I've seen like even like when I go to like for example all the announcements and everything, like how there's like programs for everyone's included, and that's like a really big thing. Like you would like have like there's read lessons for men and women, and you know all these different things. So that needs to start happening for everyone rather than having it for like exclusive groups.
We had Tajweed and it was just Tajweed, and then the people themselves felt uncomfortable about having. So then they asked us to have Tajweed for women and Tajweed for men. So then we did that, but we just had Tajweed. So some of it is that, like, we have two places you can pray as a woman in Clifton, right? We have downstairs with everybody else, or upstairs. And the reality is that there are women who want to be upstairs. There are women who want to be segregated from the men, and then there are women who don't. And so we have two spaces for whoever wants to do whichever one they want to do. You see what I'm saying? Because it's not my choice to say, no, you have to be upstairs, or it's not my choice to say, no, you have to be behind here. It's wherever she feels the most comfortable in our building. That's the way it should be, right? So it's creating a space where people feel the most comfortable that they can, but not dictating where they have to be. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense at all? And I don't know if we'll ever get to that point. I really don't. I don't think that we'll ever get to the point where we're like, and I don't know if I want us to get to the point where it's like just men and women like intermingling each other in the robes. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, where does tradition come in within our buildings? We have a strong tradition. Where do we follow tradition? And then where do we allow for feminism? Or where do we allow for, you see what I'm saying? And those are all the questions that are up in the air. Do we have to be behind, or can we be side by side? So there's a mosque in in Toledo, where men pray on this side and women pray on that side. And there's like a curtain that goes down the middle that separates them. And the imam stands right in the middle between the two of them. Which bucks tradition, right? Doesn't it? That's not the way, but it brings about an egalitarian understanding of men and women are equal within religion.
Well, I feel like there's definitely certain things that are like almost set in stone where it's like men can do them and women can't. But I don't necessarily feel like less than because those things are, I guess, applied like to my mosque. Because like I know like it says that in the Quran. Like I feel like there's some things that like you just like it's understood like that like this is something that like a man will do, this is like something that a woman will do. But I also don't think that that prevents like that should affect people's mindset and like how open they should be towards women. Because like at the end of the day, like whatever's said in the Quran is like said in the Quran. But that doesn't mean that like us as people and like people that go to the mosque have to like can't be flexible in terms of like trying to make some effort. I guess like it would just start with like understanding. I feel like a lot of it is just people's mindsets, and that's something that's like really hard to change.
Yeah, I think with us, we also suffer from not just multi-generational understandings, but multi-ethnic understandings, So
Yeah.
we've talked about this a lot before, that in our homes, we have parents or grandparents who are from somewhere else, and we have children that are raised here, and so you have these cultural differences, and I've talked to a lot of parents and say, it's like raising a stranger in my home. And I talk to a lot of kids and they're like, they just don't understand that I cannot be that, I'm not that, I'm not from there, I don't have those cultural sensibilities, this is where I'm from, this is what I believe, this is what, and so those things are also a part of it. But what I would love to do, this is something I'm trying to work on in Clifton, is trying to have a conversation with women from all different faiths, all different ages, about what does it mean to be a woman. I won't be in the conversation, but I'm trying to arrange the conversation. To just have women from Catholicism, Hinduism, Islam, atheism, lesbians, whatever, just sit down and talk about what it means to be a woman. And then try to support each other in that idea, to see that feminism and femininity is not controlled by one standard. And then I would like to do the same thing with men. Get a group of men together and talk about what is masculinity. But I know what men do when we get together and we talk about masculinity. We become more masculine than we really are, right? So like, flexing on each other and all that. So it really wouldn't work with men as much as it would work with women. Men would be cracking on each other and saying, well, yeah, well, your mama snaps and all that. Women would actually probably do it and come out of it with some benefit in understanding that femininity is not just one style or one set. And I think that's the thing that we have to look at, that all women are different. All women want different things. Women want different things from their religious life than other women want from their religious life. Some people want to pray 5 times a day in the mosque, and some people want to pray on the Eid. You know what I mean? And there needs to be, like, how do we allow people to have that space too? To where your level of religious commitment is your level of religious commitment. I'm doing a wedding next month with a family, and I was like, yeah, you know, a lot of Muslims will do every sin but eat pork. And like everyone in the family said, yeah, that's us. I was like, every sin? And they're like, yeah, pretty much everything but eating pork. And I was like, okay, so I get that, right? That's where some people are at, but is it my job to judge them and shame them into something? Or is it my job to love them and show them a better way by me being a better way? You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? And that's the same with the idea of feminism in Islam. If there's a woman who comes to the mosque and she doesn't want to sit where someone tells her she has to sit, and she doesn't want to dress the way someone wants her to dress, do we deny her access to God? Do we say you can't pray here and be here because you don't want to conform to what we think God wants from you? We had a sister in Denver, that's where I came from before I came here, and she wanted to go in the mosque and pray, but she didn't have a hijab on. 5 brothers forcefully removed her from the mosque. So do you think that caused more damage or more good came out of that situation?
Damage.
For sure damage, right? For sure. Now I understand that you shouldn't pray without wearing a hijab. That's fiqh. We all understand that, okay? I get that. But do we punish her because maybe she doesn't have that same understanding? Do we punish her because maybe that's not where she's at? Imanian, you know, with her iman to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that that's where she's at. Do we punish her and say she can't even have the chance of having a relationship with God? To me, that makes no sense. That's actually that's a worse crime to me. Yes, ma'am.
I also feel like the reason that women are like more like there's like the gap or whatever is because I think a lot of times we're raised to be like what a Muslim woman looks like versus there's not really a thing for what a Muslim man should look like. So if you don't wear hijab or you don't dress a certain way, you're instantly like she's not a good Muslim. But that's not the case for when you look at a man, right? If you wear shorts that are too short or if he does whatever, you're not gonna be like, your first thought isn't, oh, he's a bad Muslim. But for girls, like I don't wear hijab, and I've known multiple men like my entire life who be like, oh, like I've heard people be like, oh damn, like she doesn't dress like that, so she's probably like a really bad Muslim, or she does this. It's more easy to judge women because we're raised to be like, this is what they have to look like. Or like not have to, but like obviously.
I hear what you're
but
saying.
with men, it's not like that. And like
that whole ideal Muslim thing.
Yeah, that's not for men. It's not like
you
know, like
it's a horrible way to try to live your life, right? And I get what you're saying that women. So even if you have a mixed, you say you're a parent like I am, and you have daughters and sons, no one cares what their son is really doing, right? Like, they don't really care. They're like, well, don't get yourself in too much trouble. But if they have a daughter, she's wearing, where's your hijab and and we're a lot more strict on our daughters than we are on our sons.
Yeah.
And that's because, like you said, everyone can see my level of religiosity through my daughter. It's not your level of religiosity, it's my level, right? Well, where's her dad in all this? You know what I'm saying? So we do a lot of stuff out of shame as Muslims and trying to save face with each other rather than doing what we want to do or what we think is right for us. But I think we need to throw out those ideals. We need to just get rid of them. There's no such thing as an ideal Muslim. There's no such thing as an ideal Muslim. If we all were realistically counting our flaws, we would all see that we are far from being the ideal of anything. All of us. 100, that's 100% the truth. None of us are ideally anything. So there's an ideal that we should strive for, but we should strive for the ideal us. Right? I can only fear Allah as much as I can. I can't fear Allah or love Allah or be subservient to Allah or whatever as much as someone else wants me to be. And it was really hard for me to figure out that my kids are not going to be the Muslim that I am. That my kids aren't going to think the same way I think about things. That my kids there's a possibility that they might be something they might leave Islam. Who knows what your children are going to do, right? So you have to, as a parent, what do I want? Do I want to push my children away from truth, or do I want to take them into truth? And so we can judge everybody and say, well, you're not being a good enough Muslim, or I know by the way you're dressed that you're not committed to this religion. And that's something that people do all the time. And what it does is it pushes people further away from the religion. We're really good at that, right? When someone takes their shahada, how do we act? We're wicked happy, right? Wicked happy, like, ooh, they took the shahada. But we don't think about how many people have left. So 25% of people who are born and raised Muslim, like you guys, leave Islam. 22% of people convert to Islam. So it's almost an even trade-off. So whenever I give a shahada to someone, I'm wondering who they're replacing. Right? And the reason why people leave Islam, if you talk to the people who are leaving this religion, some of them just don't believe in it. But a lot of them are leaving because they feel that they're treated unfairly, that there's inequity within the way men and women are treated within this religion. And I can say that it's true. Should it be true? No. And I can say, look, our book says it shouldn't be true, but human nature gets in the way rapidly. So it changes things quickly, the way we treat one another. And then most of us are quite content with having this separate but equal attitude. Men and women were created to perform different tasks, and as long as we're performing our own tasks, then everything is good. And most Muslims are kind of in this separate but equal category, right? Not that everything should be equal, but that we're gender-based and we do things according to our gender. And I think that's where most Muslims are at. And I don't think that's necessarily the right way to look at men and women either. Right?
I think the opportunity to do the same thing should be the same. But naturally there are some things.
Physically, the women men are stronger.
Exceptions, some women are better, fighters, and there's
there's obviously exceptions to every rule. But there are genetic differences between men and women. I'm not arguing that.
Yeah.
That there are definitely genetic differences, but there are no mental differences between men and women. If you look at IQ tests that are taken, men and women score relatively the same. There's no difference mentally between men and women. There's access to opportunity is the issue that we don't have.
Exactly.
So I used to deal with this Afghani family, and he would always complain that his wife and daughters had to see a male OBGYN. Right? So I said, well, hopefully, inshallah, Allah Azza wa Jal will bless your daughter to go to med school and she'll become an OBGYN. And he said, I don't want her to go to school. I don't want her to work. And I was like, don't you understand that you don't want your daughter to see a male OBGYN, but then you have the solution by letting your daughters become OBGYNs, but you don't want them to have an education past high school, because you want them to get married and be moms. So what are you going to do to your grandchildren then? they're gonna have to see what? A male OBGYN. You see what I'm saying? That's that kind of thinking that like stops us from progressing. Why can't women be doctors? Why can't women be attorneys? Why can't women run Fortune 500 companies? Why can't women be everything that a man is? They can. The Prophet ﷺ worked for who? Who was his boss? Khadija radiallahu anha. He worked for a woman. She was the CEO. He was the salesman. Right? So what happened that so all of a sudden women can't do these jobs? Women aren't smart enough to run businesses when the Prophet ﷺ worked for a woman who ran a very successful business? So we've switched it, right? Somehow we've gotten away from those original teachings that allow for women to have these freedoms. These freedoms of opportunity. I believe in equality of opportunities, not equality of outcomes. Right? Because there's a huge difference. Equality of opportunity means everybody has an even playing field. But what you do with it is what you do with it. So if I work hard and I become a doctor, and I had the same opportunity as everybody else, but this guy decided to drop out in 8th grade, and this guy decided, you know what I mean? That we shouldn't have the same outcome. So opportunity of opportunities, but not equality of opportunities, but not equality of outcomes. So how do we make sure that women have an equal playing field?
See, these questions it's like you can't really solve.
No, we're not going to solve it.
Yeah. But I mean, what you can do, I mean, you can teach your kids the right way to think.
Right.
Opposed from, I mean, like that's how you solve the problem with time.
Yeah, so this is generational. This is a generational problem. It took generations to get us here. It'll take generations to get us out of it. This is the reality of it, right? It took generations for us to keep limiting the rights of women until they have basically none. And then it'll take us generations to widen that out to where they have the same rights that the Prophet ﷺ gave them. And that Allah gave them. You see what I'm saying? So it takes each one of us willing to stand up for the rights of our sisters. So when we hear somebody tell one of our Muslim sisters, you're sinful for not wearing the hijab, we should say, that's her choice. That's her choice. When we hear somebody say she's not a good Muslimah because she's not dressed appropriately, you don't know her, you don't know what kind of Muslim she is. Right? So it takes us starting to defend the rights of our sisters. That's what it takes. And then we have children of our own, and we teach them the right way to be, right? We teach them that this is the way that we're supposed to be. And we start to slowly change the way we look at things until our sisters have the liberation they had 1,400 years ago. Sad to me, it's very sad. But it's a fact. What do you guys think about all that? You guys all look like you're depressed, man. I can tell some jokes for a while if you want. We have 7 more minutes. I can tell you a joke or something. But that's really what it is, right? So like, I would suggest this moving forward for you as an MSA. You can take it for what it's worth. I'm a fat white guy from Manhattan, so take it for what it's worth, right? I think you should reach out to people like Rula Alouche, who's the president of CARE. Reach out to people who maybe you even disagree with, who are Islamic feminists. I can't think of any off the top of my head who aren't incredibly controversial, but like Amina Wadud, people like this, academics who deal with Islamic feminism, and see if you can invite them to come and do the same kind of thing, right? Where they can talk to you about it. And then I would suggest that you sisters get together and decide what that means for you. What does it mean to be Muslim? What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to demand rights? And then how do you go about building a platform for you to achieve that? You see what I'm saying? And what women's groups can you come in contact with? Or invite like United We Stand. I think my wife's on their board. I should know her name. I really should know. People who do the Women's March here in Cincinnati. My wife's on their board. I should really know their name. But you can invite them, right? And they can talk about what it means to be a a woman, what it means to be an empowered woman, and how to empower other women. And then for us men, we should come to those and hear what sisters are saying to us. Because men, right, if we look at it classically, Islamically, men are supposed to be the protectors of women, right? So I have to ask, are we protecting our Muslim sisters? Are we? Who gets attacked on the street? Do men get attacked on the street? Does anyone ever come and try to pull off my thobe? No, never, right? Anyone ever come and try to shave your beard as you're walking down the street?
Nope.
But how many women are attacked having someone try to rip up their hijab, or these kind of things? So we're not really protecting our sisters the way we should, because we're not standing with them in their most vulnerable hours. We're not standing with them when somebody is treating them badly. We're not standing with them when people are, disparaging their character. And that's that whole thing about she's not probably a good Muslim. That's taking away your honor. That's sullying your repute, as they would say in the ancient language of English, right? So are we standing with our sisters in those times? Or are we the ones pointing our fingers at them saying that they're this and they're that? So if we want to work on have a society that is equal, which is what I work for every day, to have a society where everybody is equal within that society, it has to start with us first, right? It has to start with the men and women in this room who want to see their Muslim sisters have as many rights as they have. And this also does what for you, if you want to be really selfish about it, it ensures that you will have your rights. If you can help them have their rights, it'll ensure that you maintain your rights. Right? So that's what I would take these next steps, invite people who aren't Muslim, right, to come and talk to you about feminism, to come and talk to you about what you guys can do, the next steps that you guys can take together to work for women's rights in America, not only in the deen, but in America and the world. We get hit hardest about the way women are treated internationally, right? Every time a woman gets beat to death in Pakistan and it's an honor killing, it goes all over the news, right? But when, Shirley is beaten to death in the trailer park for the same exact reason, you don't hear anything about it. So you guys also need to start telling people that, women are abused and battered in every society. It's not just Muslims, but it's every society. The West is not a feminist utopia. Women still get paid less than men. Women are still beaten to death by men here, right? So there's no feminist utopia out there. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with misrepresentation from the media, especially Fox News, for example. Every time you see somebody with a hijab, especially representing the media, you just read the comments, and they're all like, "Oh, she's being oppressed. I don't want that happening to my daughters and my family." And it's like, no, that's not the case. More people just need to have that education.
Yeah. So who should educate them? Me or Muslim women? Muslim women should educate them, right? But it's also that they do talk to people like Aaron Harisi, what's her name? Aaron. She's a Somali lady. She wrote a book called Infidel. You know what I'm talking about? Look it up. But they talk to women like that she was a Somali. She is still Somali, but she was a Muslim. And then she left Islam, and she blames Islam for everything that ever happened during her life. So people read those books. And it wasn't Islam that did that to her. It was bad men who happened to be Muslim, right? So we do have a media image problem, but a lot of that is because Muslims are doing really stupid things. So we do have an image problem, but if Muslims weren't doing bad things, would we have an image problem? No, not at all. So we can solve the bad image problem by making sure that people follow Islam. Pretty simple thing, right? I can't control what anybody does, but I also don't apologize when idiots I don't know do things. I have nothing to do with ISIS. I have nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. I have nothing to do with the Shabab. I have nothing to do with those idiots. Whenever they do something, I had nothing to do with it. I'm sorry that human life was taken. I'm sorry that people were abused, but I had nothing to do with it. And I think that's really hard for Muslims living in modernity because, especially in your age, you guys grew up in that September 11th reality, right? Where somehow you feel you have to take the weight of every idiot who happens to be Muslim and put it on your shoulders. You don't. You don't have to own that. That guy's an idiot just like Dylan Roof was an idiot. You didn't hear white people lining up to apologize when he killed 9 people in a church, did you? You want to know why? Because white people are never going to apologize for something they didn't do personally. So why should we apologize for things that we didn't do personally? Did I harm anybody? Did I kidnap any girls in Nigeria? No. Idiots who follow the same faith as me did. I don't have to apologize for what some idiot in Nigeria does. Do I? I don't have to apologize for some guy that happens to be French and Spanish and commits a crime. It has nothing to do with me. So why do we feel like we have to do that whenever a Muslim does something? Why? It's a bit of an inferiority complex, right? So stop doing it. It wasn't me. It was them. It was them. Blame him. Blame the guy that did it. Don't blame me. Don't blame my faith. Don't blame what I believe in. Blame the idiot who did it. Simple. Anything else? I think we're supposed to end at 7 and it's 7:01. Anything else? Yes, sir.
I mean, you're right, we shouldn't apologize for what other people did, but at the same time, I think it's our job to clear up what.
Definitely. And there's a difference between being apologetic and clearing up what Islam really teaches. Okay? And what we tend to do is we lead with a lot of apologies and we never get around to telling what Islam really teaches. So the best way that we can solve those problems is that we educate everyone we're around before something happens on what Islam is. So that when someone blows something up or somebody harms something, or somebody, we don't have to explain that's not Islam because we already taught everyone we know what Islam is. So they know when they see that that's not Islam. You see what I'm saying? That's the best way to do it. Cool in the fan? I agree though 100% though.
Yeah.
100%. I've dedicated my life to trying to teach people that we're not all idiots. Anything else? Looks like you're asleep back there, man. So I guess we're done. Jazakallah khair for inviting me. I'm sorry if I ruined your Thursday night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.